Hi, my name is Justin King. I'd like to thank you for participating, joining in my workshop today. That happens to be over the topic of project-based learning, and more specifically, how project-based learning, I feel, kind of has an unfair advantage over traditional instruction, if you will. And I'll explain why I think that. For several years now, in a couple different aspects of my instruction, I've had the pleasure of instructing in a setting where project-based learning was the way. And basically, I've had students in those two classes that I've taught in this structure for the last several years basically come back to me and say that my class was their favorite. Now, I could flatter myself and think that I had everything to do with this, but I will choose not to. In fact, I think I'm almost certain that yes, while hopefully I do provide sort of a warm, welcoming environment for my students. In all actuality, I think the fact that they are able to come into my class and to kind of have a break from the traditional instruction throughout the day is basically what, at least 50% of what makes them feel that way about my class. Again, I hope it is a little bit me, and I do relate to young people well. But I don't fool myself into thinking that it's all me, of course. Um, why I chose this area of instruction? Well, I began Merrimack Valley R3 School District at Pacific High School. I was fortunate enough to create, to help with the help of our tech director at the time, Debbie Haley. We constructed an IT hardware repair course for that entire district, and actually we acted as a help desk or a geek squad, if you will, for that entire district at the time. I was the one in charge of fixing Chromebooks in that district at the time, and we saw that some other districts were starting to go the route of having that help desk just act as a liaison for technology throughout the entire district. It definitely benefited the technology department in a huge way, and it gave students skills that are just absolutely invaluable in today's global technology world, if you will. Okay, it was called Chromeland Security. We borrowed that from another district. I think all ideas in education are borrowed or stolen. We did, and I liked that it was kind of a play on Homeland Security. We had our own logos and everything made up, but the students, it's still going strong at Pacific High School, and the students in that district absolutely loved it. I think a lot of them, it was their favorite class. I dubbed it the anti-traditional classroom. Certain students, kind of thrived in that setting. I think we all have some of those students in our class that just don't seem to, excel in the setting where you come in and you lecture to them and you have a set exam schedule and you have homework and worksheets and stuff like that. Some students have enough self-discipline to, do well and thrive in whatever setting that you put forth, as we know. But there's a lot of students, again, that I think stay engaged and kind of, perform better if they have a project that they're working on. So when I had the opportunity to move to Fox C6 School District in Arnold, Missouri this last summer, when the PLTW engineering position came open at Fox High School, I was thrilled. Many aspects of the PLTW setting kind of led to a logical transition for me professionally. They liked the fact that my previous class was hands-on, that it involved a good amount of technology experience from both me and for the students. And, we kind of agreed that the setting was a great fit. So far, I feel like it's been the best professional decision that I've made. So when we're talking about project-based learning, you could also, I think, kind of introduce project-based learning as problem-based learning. Okay. And the parallel there I love is that engineering quite simply put, is finding a solution to a problem. Okay. So basically, when you have a project based environment in your class, you're hoping that your students can kind of work together as a team and research individually, but also kind of bring back their research to their team and find a solution to a problem, right? Whatever that problem may be. That problem could be something different for, every single content area. And after teams or partners are chosen, you can kind of introduce a debatable issue, I think, to kind of spark your, discussion for whatever it is that you're going to be introducing to them, the problem that they're going to be seeking out. I have a link here that I'm going to click on and show you an infographic that basically talks about the 5 phases or the 5 keys to project-based learning. Go here to my presentation view. Okay. When you talk about project-based learning, you're talking about, five different keys or 5 different phases. Okay. You begin by introducing one big question to your students. Okay. You can kind of pique their interest, when they first come into whatever unit of content you might be exploring, and you begin them with a thought-provoking question. And you can do this right off the bat without them being in any kind of groups or anything. And it makes for some good open-ended discussion, obviously. Okay. Next, you're going to engage students in choice and voice. Okay. Allow them basically to have a say in what it is that they're going to learn to an extent. Okay. It's very much student-led inquiry, in my opinion. Okay. The alternative is the traditional view is teacher-led, right? And again, we know that some students, quite frankly, they're going to do well no matter what setting you present to them. But again, some students are going to thrive in that student-led inquiry aspect of things. Okay. Next, we'll talk about collaboration. You're going to incorporate some student-led collaboration where they brainstorm and they kind of bring their brainstormed ideas back to one another. There's a myriad of ways to organize those thoughts, as we know, and you're going to kind of be sensitive to all voices and encourage. You're going to demand basically that all of them participate, so that everyone's viewpoints feel valued. At that point, you're going to talk about number 4, which is reflection. Okay, you're going to allow students to kind of reflect regularly on their work. And that way they're also going to be able to revise it, as they go along. I'll also talk about, eventually I'm going to talk about a little bit of some appropriate feedback that, specifically that we talk about in engineering. Feedback is just almost the backbone of what we do in PLTW engineering. 5, you're going to present, your discoveries, your experimentation. You're going to present what you find to an authentic audience. It's great if that audience can be outside of the classroom. Obviously, I realize that can't always be the case, but with what I believe these students lack perhaps the most today is, they need to enhance their communication skills, and it gives them a sense of accomplishment at the end of the day as well. Okay, I'm really hoping my transition kind of phased into the link that I had set up there for my Canvas infographic, or Canva infographic, but we'll go back and take a look at that and clean that up if we need to. Okay. Basically, we're still talking about those 5 phases of project-based learning. Okay. The brainstorm is kind of the next installment, if you will. You're basically, you're getting your students together in a group, whatever your content kind of dictates for your specific project, and get them together for an idea generating, workshop almost, right? A session. If ask them, what do you think will happen, and have them kind of bring back their ideas, their, educated guesses, if you will, back to, the group. Okay. But what I think project-based learning does is, specifically the brainstorm aspect of things, is it engages students in a process where, they're going to become empowered, to have a voice, not only in your group setting, but more so in any group setting that they will have, hopefully throughout the rest of the time that they're in. Specifically, we're talking secondary setting here, but this should work really well, I believe, at the middle school, setting as well. And I know that my 10th grader currently in fourth grade at his elementary school, I know his teacher utilizes project-based learning as well. And, when Jonah comes home and he talks about some of the most fun things that they've done, it's when they've done projects like this together. And I haven't even been fortunate enough to have these deep conversations with his teacher. But I can tell when Jonah kind of tells me what they're doing in any particular week, that, Mr. Branch is touching on some project-based learning aspect of, his training, or maybe he's experimenting with something new. In engineering, we discussed the design process. Okay. Again, I'm going to click on a link here, and I really hope that it takes the redirect works and we record here. And I'll try to, briefly kind of set up here what we're talking about with the design process. Okay. It's real similar to, again, the 5 phases of the project-based learning. Okay. This is the design process. It's something we talk about in all of the PLTW engineering courses. And basically, it kind of parallels what the engineering design process, talks about in the professional world, for career aspirations for some of these students. Okay. Basically, with the first step, you're defining a problem. So again, that should sound kind of, familiar. You're introducing a question, right? A problem that that society is facing, or perhaps a problem in your particular content area. Next, you're going to generate concepts, right? That's the brainstorm session that we're talking about. Okay. Students are going to brainstorm. They're going to come back and, generate ideas for their, brainstorming solutions to this potential problem, right? Next, you're going to develop these solutions. You're going to discuss the iterative nature of the design process. We talk about iteration as something key in engineering. Basically, you kind of bring a prototype to the table. We talk about issues with that particular prototype. You iterate, right? You kind of foresee ways to make that particular solution better, and then you bring it back and you improve it next. Okay. So then you construct and test your design, right? Basically, you're giving it a good hard test here. Is it durable? Is it performing properly? And then you're going to kind of justify the path, or how did you come to this particular prototype test, right? You're going to collect and analyze test data based on what you have constructed as well, right? To kind of back up your, design. Next, we're going to evaluate the solution. Okay. So that's, this is probably, reflection here is key. Reflection is a huge part of project-based learning as well. You're going to seek feedback about your design. You're going to come back and reflect on your own design. Then that's basically an evaluation of whatever the solution to the bigger problem is, right? And then ultimately, you'll come back after you've iterated and improved your solution, and you're going to present your solution to that larger audience that we talked about in project-based learning as well. Okay, let's navigate back here. And again, if those links didn't show up, I'm going to try to, when I go back and edit this video, I'll try to stick those in there. But basically, the question I would like at this point for you to kind of all, ask yourselves is how can this translate into the content that we teach, right? How can we make this, PLTW engineering kind of easily is, it basically is structured to be project-based learning. Now, not just engineering in the PLTW programs, but like the computer sciences, the biomedical sciences, all of the PLTW schools of thought, right? All of their curriculums are basically designed to be project-based learning. Okay. So it's kind of easily set up, I guess, for us that we would transition there, in a seamless, manner, if you will. But I honestly believe that this could work for everyone. And it's going to be a way that's going to, like I said, I mentioned with an uneven playing field at the beginning of the presentation, this is going to keep your students more engaged. And if you do this on a regular basis, or maybe even if you dive in head first and kind of immerse your entire, subject area in this project-based learning, students are going to be engaged, and they're going to want to come to your class ready to learn. And some of them are even going to think that it's your favorite class, regardless of how strong you feel you are, how competent you are as an instructor. Okay. By no means do I think I'm the best, instructor in the world. I think the parameters, the framework for my class kind of helps me, if you will. It kind of boosts me up. I think that's probably a good way to say it. Ultimately, when we're talking about collaboration, we need to, when you're in the collaboration aspect of project-based learning, you need to demand nothing short of a total collaboration. This is where it gets a little bit, it's tricky, if you will. Okay. Because some students, quite frankly, are just, you get them in a social setting and they just almost shut down. They refuse to have any input. But I demand personally in my setting that everyone has a voice, and they must use their voice to provide some sort of input. Okay. I always talk about this in both of the last classes that I've taught, that I want to push kids outside of their comfort zone. Okay. I think what's great about us, continuing our education as teachers, is that we are constantly pushed outside of our comfort zone. And some of my, fondest experiences, if you will, from field experience and doing different trainings and do even student teaching, I my mentor teachers, my professors, they pushed me outside of my comfort zone, and I was grateful for it. I think it probably made me a more well-rounded educator, but it also made me probably a more well-rounded individual as well. Okay, so you need to have a good structure for what the goal of your collaboration is, right? I think it's probably important to model proper listening techniques for these students, and make sure that all opinions are valued. This is extremely key. I've got a principles of engineering class in particular that the way they're incredibly neat kids, and some of them in there are just impressively brilliant. But the way they interact with each other, sometimes I kind of sit back and I allow myself to be a little bit of a fly on the wall. They almost insult each other. It's not, it's passive aggressive, if you will, but I don't think they set out to insult each other, but it's a lack of social awareness is what it is, right? There's a positive way to deliver feedback. There's a positive way to receive feedback. And then obviously there's a way we don't want to deliver feedback, and nobody wants to be criticized unfairly, right? So feedback is key in this setting as well. We constantly talk about giving and receiving feedback in PLTW engineering. We use something called praise, question, polish. It's a huge aspect of what we do. You kind of start out your constructive feedback with your partner by telling them why you like something about their idea, right, or design. You raise a question. Okay, how do you think this could be improved, right? And you get that partner talking a little bit about how they think they could, and then you finish. You kind of bring it home with a polished solution to that feedback for them as well, right? So I think you could have made this a little bit better by doing this. It's an important form of feedback, and I think it just helps the students immensely socially as well. Now, this is where your mind may be particularly blown, okay? And by no means do you have to follow this model. It kind of works out nice for me that this is the way that PLTW engineering is, and really probably all of the PLTW classes are structured this way. My particular assessment method is based on all of the aspects of the project, right? The participation. A big portion for me, what I use for my summative assessment is the engineering notebook. Okay, and I've got a little bit of an example here in the image that you can see here. It's important for students to take notes. That's part of that brainstorming process that transpires. They probably have some of the feedback written in there from both themselves and from their peers. You could see there's some design or some concept sketches there, right? Before we ever start to get tools on our hands and start to build something, start to create something, we're going to make a crude sketch of it and kind of describe in our notebooks the way that it's going to hopefully work, right? So the culmination of that engineering notebook throughout the entire semester basically evolves into a huge portion of their summative assessment. There is no set exam schedule in my class. There are quizzes that I use for formative assessment, but basically that's kind of a gauge of, are we ready to move on to another unit, into another content area within whatever engineering class I might have to be in. I didn't really touch on I teach Introduction to Engineering Design, Principles of Engineering, and Civil Engineering and Architecture. And there's a possibility that I will also be teaching Aerospace Engineering next year as well. I'll be taking a core training for that over the summer also. But yeah, hopefully that doesn't blow anybody's mind here, and I don't lose anybody by saying, yeah, it's true. My assessment method is based around the project. It's not an exam schedule, not even necessarily students. What I like about it is probably where some people get lost in translation, is that there's nothing that you're going to study for the night before and then come in and test over the next day, right? So what this does is this kind of, alleviates, if you will, or, makes obsolete the need for any kind of exam anxiety, right? Test anxiety, or students forgetting that they didn't, they needed to study for a test when it wasn't happening. Basically, I think assessing them over a week-long project or a 2-week-long project over all aspects of what they did, to me, is much more valuable than how they're going to perform on a 45-minute test that they do at the end of anything. That's just my personal opinion, and maybe you find that it works for you. Okay, the choice is really up to you. Traditional exams, whether they're necessary or not, right? And like I said, perhaps quizzes can be utilized as like a means of, a checkpoint, if you will, before you kind of advance. You can also, again, structure your assessment based on the group performance, right? The individual performance. You can kind of do both, all right? I personally feel like, I like that way better. But it is what it is. What does a typical day look like in a project-based learning classroom? This model is set up for 90-minute block scheduling. I also realize that not everybody has 90-minute block scheduling. Okay. However, this is kind of a crude way that you could, you could segment your class, right? You might come in and that first 10 minutes is your introductory question, right? Like you ask that big open-ended question, you kind of pique their discussion, get them talking. Next, 20 minutes, we've decided on our groups now, whether it's partners or whether it's groups of, larger groups of 3 or 4. And now we're collaborating. Now we're working together. Okay. We're brainstorming those ideas, the solutions to that particular problem. And then we go in and, we can start to design and create our, solution to our problem, right? Finally, we would report back. We're going to reflect a little bit based on some feedback we're going to receive at some point between the design and creation process and before the report, iterate, and improve process. We'll kind of go back and seek some feedback and then reflect on that feedback, and then iterate and improve our design, right? And then at the end of that period, now, doesn't have to look like this every single day, because again, you don't have to fit all of the aspects of project-based learning into your simple 90-minute time frame or your 45-minute time frame. 45-minute, or 50-minute time frame for a traditional class setting is obviously going to look much different, right? And maybe it just works better to break up your days, right? Maybe we discuss on Monday, and maybe if we have the same students on Tuesday, then we start to collaborate. There's basically room for interpretation of the structure, and it can be specialized or individualized to tailor your own specific needs. Okay, thought I'd share some of my findings here, if you will. All right, some of my discoveries. What might you learn after operating your class this way? Well, quite simply put, I think you're going to find that certain students are going to thrive in this setting. Okay, many of my students claim that my class is their favorite, and Chromeland Security was the same way. Now, I'll kind of go back and say it would be awesome if I were the sole reason for that. Probably not. Like, it needs to be not an individual reason that they're that you're making them feel this way, but hopefully what they're gaining from the experience, right? So I really do strongly believe that I've been gifted with this opportunity of having two different classes that put tools in students' hands and either let them fix things, repair things, or design and build things, and they work as a team while they're doing it. And it ends up like this is what the professional setting is like, folks. I mean, you're going to work as a team in a professional setting. You're going to have to, finish a project in a timely manner. And basically you're going to have a lot of feedback along the way. And some of the ideas that you're going to agree with, some you won't. And, it's important as a human experience too, I think, for students to learn to deal with that. Right. And I think there's an immense amount of, differentiation taking place within this structure. Okay, because I've got students from all backgrounds, from all achievements, individualized learners who learn differently, and they all seem to be doing well in this setting. That's what's important about this. Okay, perhaps the biggest takeaway for project-based learning is that right now, currently in your classroom, you probably treat the project like the dessert, right? It is something you're going to look forward to after the exam is finished. You're going to kind of throw the students a bone and say, for supplement, when we're done with, the unit that we're learning, we're going to perform a project, and it's going to be awesome, and it'll be supplemental learning information, whatever. And that's going to be great. And that's something that they do look forward to. Okay. The big shift I think that probably needs to take place is that the project it becomes the main course. It's no longer the dessert. The entire unit is now broken up into chunks where it is the main course. It is something that you are enjoying every single day, not just something students look forward to. That's going to be if you put yourselves in your students' perspective, that's going to be a huge bonus for them, I believe, personally as well. Okay. Ultimately, what are you trying to accomplish in your classroom, right? Are you looking for ways to differentiate, to reach those individual learners, the ones that are, maybe a little tricky to reach? Are you attempting to engage? Are you hoping to keep engagement, right? Are you hoping to, reach ultimate retention of their learning? Some questions I think you probably need to take away. Are you willing to adapt your traditional view of instruction from teacher-led to student inquiry? It's kind of a vulnerable position, if you will, right? When I went through my student teaching, that was a teacher-led and traditional aspect of teaching. However, what I found when I was able to transition to this is that the students kind of liked it better. I kept more student attention, if you will. Okay. Um,